Hey everyone, I'm BJ and this is Brickhouse Builds. In this video, I'm going to show you how to eliminate the air assist system on your forks for a cleaner look as well as a more consistent ride. The basic goal will be to install a more traditional preload spacer and cap off the air assist ports in a simple DIY fashion. For this, you'll need a few basic tools along with some inexpensive hardware for a cheap and easy mod. So let's dive in on how to do it. Now before we go any further, I want to go ahead and explain exactly how this system works and why we're going to delete it. Now, in stock form, the hoses that would normally be up here that would couple the two fork legs together, you would input air into that, and that's going to act as a preload setting for you. So if you can imagine, inside your forks you have a column of fluid, your fork oil, and then on top of that, about right here, you have the column of air. Now, fluid is not compressible, but of course air is. So the air pressure in that is going to accompany the other preload spring in this, and that's going to give you your desired preload. Now, most forks, if they don't have something like that, they will have just a single spring here and a solid spacer on top, and you can kind of change the spacer length to dial in your preload, or you can have an adjustable cap up top like most sport bikes. So with this, what happens is you either get a little bit of air bleed somehow down through maybe the fork seal, or actually through the fork cap here, or through the hoses or fittings. There's a lot of potential leak points. So what happens is you will, input your air pressure to set your preload, and then for me, at least on this thing, it would take about 30 minutes to run out. And you know what? I don't really want to mess with that. So the idea behind deleting it for me is less headache. It's a little bit cleaner, and it's less things that you have to worry about getting on your bike, and you know that you can kind of set your preload and have your suspension feeling the same way every time, and I think that's important. So of course, when all things are new, when everything's fresh, when you don't have any leaks, the stock system can work perfectly fine. So I'm not going to say that this is better, but this is just another option that I'd like to provide to you guys. So with that being said, we'll jump into the video and we will start by disassembling everything, getting it all apart, and go from there. Step 1 will be to remove the air transfer line that ties the forks together. Use a 10 and 12 millimeter wrench to do this. On top of the cap, you can see a traditional Schrader valve, which is where you would add pressure to this system from. Gone forever. And wouldn't it be nice if these were regular fork caps? I was confident that I had 2 more threads left. There we go. I mean, that's not bad distance. You know, if you're gonna do it, launch it across the shop. You know, if you're gonna do it right. Now, once you undo the fork cap, what you're left with is the actual preload spring. And there's a larger spring below this. So basically what we're going to be doing is eliminating our preload spring on this one and replacing it with a section of PVC pipe. So that's going to take up some of that initial give. All right, on the bench, we have the original preload spring. We have our original cap that flew across the room. And then we have the PVC that I have cut down. So this is just the same length as the preload spring, which it will replace. I will install those. I will also go ahead and drain the fluid out of here. We'll fill it up with probably ATF or maybe some 10 weight or something, just whatever I have to get a baseline. We'll go ride this thing and it should be much improved. Okay, on the cloth here we have our main components. So once we remove the fork cap, this is what we're left with here. You can see the Schrader valve on top. This is where you input air into the system, and then it exits through this transfer port here to your transfer line. Now this system is sealed with an O-ring, and if this O-ring is wore out, or maybe some other components on the fork, this is where you're going to bleed by all of that air that you're inputting, and it's just not going to seal. You could also develop leaks through the actual hose and stuff like that. So to me, it's just maybe a little bit less headache to delete the system altogether. We will get rid of our stock preload spring, and then we will just replace this with our own dedicated preload spacer, and then you can kind of adjust the height based on that. Now, there are a couple ways of doing this to delete this system. If you wanted to keep it very simple, all you need to do is grab an M8x1. It's a very fine thread bolt. So an M8x1 bolt. I do not remember the exact millimeters here, but it looks like it's about 12. You don't want it to be too long, so it doesn't extend too far into there. Now, I also put a copper crush washer on here, but I would suggest you also do some thread sealant, and then you can actually thread this in, and it fits great. And another cool part is it really doesn't extend past the outside diameter of the actual cap, so that means you could slide this out like your whole fork out if you needed to service the bike without having to remove this, unlike your stock system. So for me though, just because I'm me, we're gonna go a step further. I removed the caps, and we're actually going to drill and tap this to fit an NPT plug. So for me, that was a little bit cleaner. I had it fitting almost flush with here when we're done, but I will walk you through that process right now. Now this is a 21/64 bit. I'm just gonna run in here and go ahead and get rid of the internal threads. Almost. So this is our 8x27 NPT tap that we're going to be using here. To drive this, it's a square drive. I found that a 3/8 inch 12 point actually fits over these really well. So it should feed itself in here. And if you've never done something like this, just know that what you want to do is go very slow. You'll do a few turns until it gets firm, and then you'll back it back out and clean it out, repeat the process. It's not a race. Now just be warned, I do not recommend doing this on the bike because the port that's inside the cap here is just going to allow shavings to go inside the fork. So these are going to be rebuilt anyway. So I'm not too concerned about it, but you definitely don't want to do this on the bike. This just happens to work as a good vise right now. Plus, makes for a decent camera angle. So do as I say, not as I do. So with running the tap in, I just try to install this type of plug, and it's very close to being within the outside diameter of the fork tube itself, but not quite. You might be able to sneak it by the break in the actual triple, but I have this plug right here. We'll test fit. Yeah, already that's within our range. Throw that in there. After we put some Teflon tape on it, that would be a perfect plug. Yeah, definitely like that. That's the cleanest solution. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot of fluid now, does it? No wonder it felt so squishy. There's no dampening, like none. We were just riding on the springs. The other side was empty as well. Okay, now what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually pouring in a little bit of fluid up top. While it's open, I'm going to start flushing out just a little bit of this. Then I'll chase that with some mineral spirits, and then I'll chase it again with oil. And so it's coming out now, and by this time it's clear, but it's still pushing out, a bunch of junk. I'm gonna go ahead and do mineral spirits if I can without spilling exactly all of it. Cap. Floor's clean. Just like your mom's mimosas, it was a little heavy on the pour. Nice and clean though. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna chase it with just a little bit more oil. There we go. Now it's running completely clear. Not going to go too crazy with this, but I'm going to put a little bit of air pressure in through the top just to kind of blow out the rest of this. All right, back up top, we're gonna add some fluid. So this is some Bell Race 7 weight, and I'm going with 200 cc's where this thing actually calls for 220. Now 220 is on a full disassembly of the fork, but since we're just draining it, there's gonna be some residual left. Now I'm just guessing at 200. So we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and pour this in, then we can get our spacer and cap on. Again, try not to make a complete mess. Ooh. we made a mess. Start of my life. Just a couple drops. All right, now it's time for our spacer and our cap. Now to get this thing on, I have found that a 1 1/4 inch 12 point actually does fit. So that's gonna make installation a lot easier than trying to use like an open end or something like that. Drop our spacer in there, and it's just a pain in the butt. Something to push against. Stuff. Okay. Now the other side didn't have the actual Schrader valve, so it sat on here flush and didn't try to rock sideways, which is arguably better. We're gonna get it though. I'm gonna have to take that off. All right, went ahead and pulled the Schrader valve off because it was trying to drive in there crooked. It's not worth the risk. My toes hurt from clenching so hard on that one. I'm gonna tighten it the rest of the way with the open end. All right. And now I will loosen the actual fork clamps and rotate the fork so our valve is in a convenient spot. Okay, time to go ahead and put the actual plug in. So we have a good fitting screwdriver. And then to seal this, I'm gonna be using this instead of some kind of thread tape. Because honestly, this is really short and it's hard to get any tape on. Let's get this on the bike. And there you have it, a very simple mod. This is, I don't know, you're gonna be invested less than 10 bucks in this thing, and I think it works really well. Just a clean little way of doing it. And of course, I went a step further with a kind of flush NPT plug instead of just that bolt. You can use whatever you want, but I just wanted to show you guys some options. So overall, the fork oil that I put in this thing feels, honestly, it feels perfect. I don't even want to make any other changes to this thing. I've put several hundred miles on this setup, and it's great. I don't want to do anything else to it, and we're just going to keep going. So overall, this is a big improvement in my opinion. Whenever we first started and got this thing going, there was a lot of front end droop or sag because we couldn't have hardly any preload in this thing. So by deleting that spring and putting in a dedicated spacer, we have maintained consistent preload, and like going over bumps and stuff and going down the road, this thing feels perfectly consistent. That is the goal. So I hope you guys like this video. If you have any questions, of course, leave them below. I will link anything that I find useful or helpful to this subject, but be sure to check the description anyway. I always have helpful links, my Amazon storefront, if we want to go to my website, grab a hat, something like that. There's always helpful info in the description. So again, I hope you guys like this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.